This is the insurance policy that this is going to be the roadmap for the Nuremberg trials that are coming up. This involves Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and all their little minions. And what we're going to do is just simply go through this so you will have an idea of who the people are. And let me just reach out with a shout out for all the state and federal judges. You guys are getting ready to get looked at really close. And all you guys that have these little hidden accounts, all these offshore accounts, well, POTUS is coming after all the criminals. So get ready, boys. It's gonna get hot. Okay, Justin, so let's read this from the epochtimes.com, and they've gone through to put together a flowchart, if you will.
The Epoch Times investigation, the insurance policy, a map showing the connections related to the Trump dossier. How did a piece of opposition research described by former FBI Director James Comey as both salacious and unverified become the driving force behind the allegations that Trump colluded with Russian authorities? Research conducted by the Epoch Times using public sources showed a web of connections related to the dossier, reaching the highest levels of the FBI, CIA, and the Obama administration. Paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, and produced by Fusion GPS, whose other clients include the Russian government, the dossier appears to have been the basis for the FBI's investigation on Donald Trump. The FBI used the dossier in part to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on Trump's team, according to a national security reporter, Sarah Carter. Two of President Barack Obama's top officials also surveilled the communications of Trump's team before and after elections. The unverified allegations in the dossier were also actively spread to media organizations, both by Fusion GPS as well as other key players involved, to cast a shadow over Trump's run for president and his presidency. Many questions are being raised by the connections before us, such as, why was the FBI so willing to accept the allegations made by Fusion GPS? And what did Obama obtain in monitoring the communications of Trump, the opponent of the candidate he supported? These matters are currently under investigation by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Department of Justice, DOJ, Inspector General, and possibly Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Now we get into the connections themselves. We'll start with Hillary Clinton, Democratic presidential candidate. During her 2016 presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton controlled both her own campaign as well as the Democratic National Committee, DNC. The Clinton campaign had paid tens of millions of dollars to the DNC, which was deeply in debt at the time, in exchange for full control, said Donna Brazile in a tell-all memoir published last year.
Better known as plausible deniability. That's her job. She's supposed to know exactly what's going on.
Brazile was appointed as interim DNC chair in July of 2016. Going down through this map, we have Hillary connected to two things, the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. We'll start with the Clinton campaign. An undisclosed amount of money, potentially millions, was paid by the Clinton campaign to Fusion GPS. The money was sent through the law firm of Perkins Coie and mislabeled in FEC filings to avoid detection. Now jump over to the Democratic National Committee.
You know, maybe that law firm made a mistake. You think they did that accidentally?
Come on, they're lawyers. They have to know the law. They're presumed to know the law, and anytime they file something that's fictitious with a federal government, it's a crime.
Yeah, but they've been around for 100 years.
Yeah, and have they been filing fictitious documents for 100 years?
Well, I don't know. That will be up for a jury to decide. But it sure looks like they have filed one here. That's the great part about this. We're getting ready to know.
I think we're going to find out. The Democratic National Committee, just like the Clinton campaign, the DNC sent an undisclosed amount of money, potentially millions, to Fusion GPS through the law firm of Perkins Coie. The payments were mislabeled in FEC filings to avoid detection. So Perkins Coie was involved in both of them, and both payments were mislabeled, I have to think, on purpose. Other financiers. Besides the Clinton campaign and the DNC, there may have been other groups paying money to Fusion GPS related to the dossier. Obama's campaign, Obama for America, made $972,000 in payments to Perkins Coie between April 2016 and August 2017, although it is unclear whether these payments were related to Fusion GPS.
Yeah, that was probably for parking and things like that.
Yeah, or maybe lunch. Okay, let's drop down to Perkins Coie now. New York-based law firm Perkins Coie paid Fusion GPS millions on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the DNC for its work on the Trump dossier. That takes us down to Fusion GPS. Two people involved here are listed. Glenn Simpson was the co-founder, or a co-founder, and Peter Fritsch was a co-founder. Fusion GPS was co-founded by journalists Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch in 2011. The company is responsible for producing the Trump dossier. Okay, now we're going to go up to the top because Hillary now jumps over to the right instead of going down to Terry McAuliffe, who's the governor of Virginia. McAuliffe is a close Clinton ally who donated to the wife of FBI Director Andrew McCabe.
Ooh, a little conflict of interest there?
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it kind of does.
And the trail then goes down to Jill McCabe, wife of Andrew McCabe. McCabe received nearly $675,000 from groups connected to Virginia Governor McAuliffe for her campaign for a seat in the Virginia State Senate. She received the payments after the FBI started its investigation on Hillary Clinton.
Ooh, not a bad day at the office, huh?
Yes. Now, from Jill McCabe, it comes over to Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe, FBI Deputy Director. McCabe was involved in both the Clinton email investigation and the FBI investigation on Trump. The trail then goes in two directions. It goes laterally to James Comey, FBI Director. As Director of the FBI, Comey oversaw investigations into Hillary Clinton's use of private email server and into the allegations of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Now, I wonder how many other cases James Comey has been involved in that have impropriety, conflict of interest, malfeasance. I guess we're going to get to find out, aren't we?
Well, right now I'm guessing anything that has to do with the Democratic Party.
Well, think about all the guys that have been prosecuted under this 8 year of terror through these different agencies.
Do you think terror is actually a word that is descriptive? Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we could use demonic. We could use
Satanic?
satanic. Yes.
Luciferian?
Luciferian. Good. Yes. Communistic.
The trail then goes down to Peter Strzok, Deputy Assistant Director, FBI Counterintelligence Division. Strzok oversaw both the investigation into Hillary Clinton's transmission of classified information using a private email server and the FBI's investigation of Trump. On a parallel line, we have Lisa Page, who's an FBI lawyer.
Not a lawyer.
A lawyer, yes. Yes.
Now, wait a minute. Is this the lawyer with the 50,000 text messages? So Peter and Lisa kind of had a thing going on, like behind the scenes, which compromised both of them now.
Hello?
I think we're going to be able to prove that shortly.
I believe they already have, but go ahead.
Okay. Page worked directly for the FBI Director McCabe. Text messages sent between her and Strzok reveal her bias in favor of Clinton and disdain for Trump.
Oh, please.
From Fusion GPS, we go to Russia. Fusion GPS produced the dossier on Trump using almost exclusively Kremlin-linked sources. The company was also hired by the Russian government for lobbying work against the Magnitsky Act. Russian lawyer Natalia Vasilnitskaya. According to a complaint to the DOJ filed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act on July 15, 2016, Vasilnitskaya was hired by Russian-owned Prevazon Holdings Limited, the same Russian entity Fusion GPS worked for, lobby against the Magnitsky Act. Vasilnitskaya was the lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. in a June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower. Court documents and emails reviewed by Fox News showed that she met with Fusion GPS co-founder Simpson on the same day before and after the meeting with Trump Jr. The Russian government, Russian-owned Prevazon Holdings, hired Simpson as well as Russian lawyer Vasilnitskaya to lobby on its behalf against the Magnitsky Act, according to a FARA complaint filed at the DOJ. Kremlin sources. The Trump dossier relies almost exclusively on Kremlin-linked sources. These include senior Kremlin officials, a senior official in the Russian Foreign Ministry, and a former top-level Russian intelligence officer still active in the Kremlin. From there, we come down to Christopher Steele, a former British spy, founding director of Obis Business Intelligence. Steele was hired by Fusion GPS to work on a series of memos that became known collectively as the Trump dossier. It is unclear, however, how much of the work was done by Steele and how much by others, including Nellie Orr. Steele was likely chosen by Fusion GPS for his known ties to FBI agents and the intelligence community. The Trump dossier. Nellie Orr, hired by Fusion GPS, wife of DOJ official Bruce Orr. Orr was hired to work on the Trump dossier. She had previously worked as a researcher for the CIA's Open Source Works project. Bruce Orr, Associate Deputy Attorney General, Director of the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. Orr, husband of Nellie Orr, was demoted in December 2017 after it was revealed he had met in secret with Fusion GPS co-founder Simpson, as well as Steele, during the campaign. FBI agents. Steele talked to FBI agents as early as July 2016 about the contents of the dossier. Now we go up here to David Kramer. David Kramer, associate of Senator John McCain. Kramer, a former State Department employee who now serves as a senator fellow at the McCain Institute, traveled to London in November of 2016 to meet with former British spy Steele and request a copy of the Trump dossier. John McCain, United States Senator, Republican, Arizona. McCain had the Trump dossier delivered to him by his associate Kramer. McCain then delivered the report to the FBI Director Comey. Key question. A key question that remains is what the exact relationship is between FBI officials and the Fusion GPS. Did the FBI have advanced knowledge of the production of the dossier? And did it have any hand in ordering its production? These questions could help to explain why the FBI so willingly accepted the unverified allegations that it used to investigate Trump. The meeting. Text messages sent between Strzok and Page, obtained by the Department of Justice Inspector General, showed a potential plot against Trump. In one message, they described a meeting they had in McCabe's office in which they discussed an insurance policy in case Trump was elected president.
My personal congratulations to Senator John Cornyn that the FISA illegal spying works both ways. You see, the deep state did not plan on having a real patriot begin to release all the information. Oops.
Wonderful. Robert Mueller.
Ouch. A total and complete criminal. A guy that had to hand deliver the uranium-1 to Putin. You know, the really great thing about all these criminals, the criminal judges, the criminal prosecutors, the criminal career politicians, is that with all the money that Trump collects, we may be able to get a big chunk knocked out of our national debt.
Former FBI Director, Special Counsel. Mueller served as FBI Director from 2001 to 2013. He was appointed as special counsel to investigate alleged Russian interference in the 2016 elections by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in May 2017. Mueller fired FBI agent Strzok after his anti-Trump bias was revealed in text messages obtained by the Inspector General. GCHQ, UK intelligence. Former British spy Steele met with United Kingdom intelligence services to provide them with the Trump dossier. CNN reported on April 13, 2017, that British as well as European intelligence agencies had passed on intercepted communications of members of the Trump team to their counterparts in the United States. CIA. The CIA prepared a confidential intelligence report for Obama on the allegations of Russian interference. Former CIA Director John Brennan has publicly said that the spy agency did not rely on the Trump dossier for its claims. However, many of the claims in its report closely resemble those made in the dossier. The wife of Fusion GPS co-founder Simpson, Mary Jacoby, wrote on Facebook that CIA had popped and immediately worked to verify the dossier. Tablet magazine reported based on screenshots of the post. The CIA, under the so-called Five Eyes intelligence sharing agreement with the United Kingdom, would have had access to UK intelligence. However, it is unclear how reliable the information was, as Steele was also feeding information to British intelligence agents. The NSA was reluctant to consider the CIA's conclusion with high confidence, given the fact that it relied in part on intelligence from another country, the Washington Post reported. John Brennan, CIA Director. Brennan provided Obama with the unverified claims that Trump colluded with Russian authorities. He set up a task force including CIA, FBI, and NSA agents that continued to feed information to Obama, the Washington Post reported. Brennan also briefed top congressional leaders on the unverified claims. J. Johnson, Secretary of Homeland Security. Based on instructions from Obama, Johnson ordered a review of state election systems. Actions taken by the DHS raised concerns among states' potential federal overreach into the election systems. The decentralized nature of America's election system acts as a safeguard against large-scale fraud. 2 weeks before the end of Obama's presidency, Johnson designated the election infrastructure as critical infrastructure, overruling concerns about federal overreach. Barack Obama, President of the United States. Unverified claims that Trump colluded with the Russian authorities made their way to Obama through the CIA. Obama used the claims to instruct Homeland Security Secretary Johnson to conduct an assessment of vulnerabilities of the electoral system. Several states, however, opposed Johnson's intervention, citing federal overreach. 2 of Obama's top officials used their positions to request unmasking requests on the communications of members of Trump's team, both before and after the election, which provided them and Obama with critical insight into Trump's campaign, as well as the transition process after he was elected. The White House also instructed key officials, such as Rice, to make public statements on the alleged Russian interference, thus influencing public opinion. General Mike Flynn, former National Security Advisor. Flynn was charged by Special Counsel Robert Mueller for lying to the FBI on December 1, 2017. The interview with Flynn was overseen by FBI agent Strzok,
who is now severely compromised, by the way.
Loretta Lynch, Attorney General. Comey testified in June of 2017 before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence that Lynch had instructed him to refer to the Clinton investigation as a matter rather than a criminal investigation. James Clapper, former Director of National Intelligence. Clapper oversaw the production of a joint intelligence report into alleged Russian interference in the election. Clapper later testified before Congress that the investigation had found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
He lied before Congress, just like Lois Lerner did. And the reason that nothing happens to them is that most of Congress is compromised.
Samantha Power, U.S. Ambassador to the UN. Power made dozens, if not hundreds, of unmasking requests for the identities of members of Trump's team collected in intercepted communications. She later testified before Congress that not all of the unmasking requests made in her name were directed by her. Susan Rice, National Security Advisor. Rice made multiple unmasking requests for the identities of members of Trump's team in intelligence reports. The surveillance of the communications of members of Trump's team took place before and after the election. The House Intelligence Committee is investigating what the surveillance was used for. NSA. The NSA, which intercepts and stores nearly all communications of every American, received multiple unmasking requests from top Obama officials for the identities of members of Trump's campaign and transition team. Trump Tower. Trump Team. Trump's campaign team, as well as his transition team, including possibly Trump himself, had their communications monitored by the Obama administration. The access by Obama officials to sensitive campaign deliberations, as well as forming of Trump's new government, is currently under investigation by the House Intelligence Committee. Harry Reid, Senate Minority Leader, Democrat, Nevada. After having been briefed by Brennan, Reid sent a letter to Comey calling on him to take action. Reid's letter was published on his website, resulting in numerous media reports on claims. While Reid did not make reference to the Trump dossier in the letter, the claims closely resembled those made in the dossier.
This is a classic RICO case, and the nice thing about RICO is that everybody involved is going to give up their money. And now we get to the fake news media down here at the bottom.
Media organizations played a crucial role in spreading the unverified allegations found in the Trump dossier.
Wouldn't that be called lies?
Yeah. Well, at least fibs.
Yeah, they are totally and absolutely lying about this, and all of them colluded to commit a crime.
And they conspired to commit a crime, and in fact did commit a crime.
Exactly right. All right, let's do the media.
Media organizations played a crucial role in spreading the unverified allegations found in the Trump dossier. Court documents from the UK, where Steele and his company are currently being sued for libel by a Russian businessman mentioned in the report, revealed that Steele had briefed reporters of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the New Yorker, CNN, and Yahoo News. Fusion GPS also directly paid journalists who reported on topics related to alleged Russian interference in the elections, court documents filed by the House Intelligence Committee show. Other key players, such as Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid, Democrat Nevada, also helped drive the media coverage with public statements. Buzzfeed News published the Trump dossier in full in January 2017.
Okay, this is January 2018, so it's been about a year for the fake news media to completely implode. You know, they've been imploding for several years now, and there's been a lot of people that know, actually, ever since 9/11, ever since Bush rigged all that up, the news media has started to this slow decline. As well as Harry Reid, when he started in on the Bundys with Bundy Ranch debacle, then later on that was proven, his involvement. So I think the Democratic Party, for the most part, of what we know now, they're done. They're over with. Crying Chucky, you're done. They're getting ready to investigate all the illegal activity that you have done, that Obama has done, that the courts have done under Obama. But, you know, it's really not even the Democrats per se, because there's a bunch of Republicans that are getting ready to go down, and I'm talking about the deep staters. And let me tell you what I think is getting ready to come up. I think that the media is getting ready to get sued so bad for consumer fraud, for... Actually, let's go back and take a look at the definition under FISA. FISA is Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And let me pull this up real quick, because there's something in here that I'd like to share with you. And it is Section 1801, definitions. And when you come down to 2C, where it talks about international terrorism means activities that, 1, involve violent acts or acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or any states, or that would be criminal violations if committed within the jurisdiction of the United States or any state. Okay, so this Antifa and all this other nonsense from George Soros, that fits right in there. 2, appears to be intended, A, to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. B, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of a government by assassination or kidnapping. And 3, occur totally outside the United States or transcends national borders in terms of the means by which they are accomplished. The persons they appear intended to coerce or intimidate, or the locale in which their perpetrators operate or seek asylum. So I think under this FISA that they've been spying on all of us. I believe what they've created is getting ready to come back and bite them in the butt in a real big way. Justin, let's talk about the word state.
I could answer that a lot better if I had the definition of state. So many places in the United States Code define state as being Washington, D.C., the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the territories of Alaska and Hawaii before they entered into statehood, and after 1960, Guam and American Samoa, which do not include the 50 states.
Yes, I understand, but this says the laws of the United States or of any state. So if this ad, Yahoo Finance, whatever else, Washington Post, blah, blah, I'm sure they got that in Washington, D.C., and that's all you need.
Okay, yes, then that would certainly apply. But the laws are written, as you well know, to make us think that they apply to us when, in fact, most of them don't.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But it does apply to the fake news broadcasters since they are corporations.
If they are broadcasting from Washington, D.C. or any other state, as defined in whatever code or whatever
subchapter. Broadcasting into Washington, D.C. That a lot of people have been aware of for several decades.
Yeah. So I think somebody, whether they know it or not now, and I suppose they do know it, have stepped in deep doo-doo.
Yes. Well, I think that they, and that's the important part about this, is that you have so many people, so many persons that work for the government or political subdivisions thereof that have done so much wrong, and all of this is getting ready to get exposed. And it's going to start here at the top. So if you go back to, squinch this down, if you would, and go back to Mueller served as FBI director from 2001 to 2013.
While we're talking about Harry Reid and the Bundy land, I think it's important. I know Bundys were aware of this, but there's so many people in America that are not. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution deals with legislative jurisdiction. And it talks about how the federal government can acquire land that is situated within one of the 50 states. And what they have to do, number one, is buy the land from the states. That purchase has to be authorized by the legislature of that state or those states if it's in more than one state. That legislature has to have a bill of ceding, if you will, to cede the land to the federal government. And then the federal government has to send a notice of acceptance of jurisdiction to the governor of that state or those states. And then the purpose for the acquisition of the land by the federal government must be for only these purposes. And the purposes are the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, or any other needful building. Now, that's backed up in Title 18 of the United States Code, which deals primarily with criminal offenses. And it talks about the legislative jurisdiction or the criminal jurisdiction of the United States, and it just about mirrors that.
Okay, but there's also a Supreme Court case. Isn't that Adams versus United States out of Louisiana?
Yes, it is.
And that backs that theory which makes it no longer a theory. The Supreme Court has actually ruled on this. Once they give an opinion, Congress has, and I forgot exactly what the term is, I think it's 6 months. Congress has a time period to either reject it if they do nothing, which they normally do. If they do nothing, it automatically becomes law on the books. So that particular case backs up everything that you've just said.
Yeah, that's an interesting case, too. If we can talk about it for just a minute.
Absolutely.
It involved the secession of land to the federal government for the purpose of erecting Camp Claiborne, a military reservation. I think it was used for basic training. The land was ceded to the federal government. The federal government went in and built barracks and mess halls and post exchanges and movie theaters and made parade grounds and rifle ranges, all that type of thing. And at some point, 3 GIs, this is back in 1943, 3 GIs got hold of a civilian woman, and it was alleged that they raped her. And they were tried for it in federal district court. They were found guilty, and they appealed that to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals smelled a jurisdictional problem here and kicked it up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the Supreme Court of the United States says that we have to overturn the case because although the legislature of the state of Louisiana in fact ceded the land to the federal government prior to the time the rape occurred, it wasn't until after the rape occurred that the United States sent the required notice of acceptance of jurisdiction to the state of Louisiana. And so because that notice had not been filed properly at the time of the rape, they had to overturn the case. The federal government did not have jurisdiction. Now, what does that mean for you and I here in Texas or anybody else in Oklahoma, New York, California, Wyoming, any of the 50 states? It means that the federal law, for the most part, does not apply unless they happen to be situated on a piece of land that has been ceded to the United States, like a military post, for example, or a federal building. The law just doesn't apply. Now, there are obviously some exceptions to that. Treason is one of them. Counterfeiting is one. Immigration laws, all of those things. Printing money and that type of thing are exceptions to those. But for the most part, all those 50 titles that you see there, most of those don't apply. As far as I know, as far as I can determine, to any of us that are in the 50 states.
Okay, so that takes us into another favorite subject, especially here in Texas, and it runs throughout the other states that we've been able to see, that deals with a phrase that the states, all the states have set up in order to sidestep the Constitution and to sidestep the Bill of Rights, and that is the phrase, "in this state." Now,
Absolutely.
In Texas, it's found in Title II for state taxation, Subtitle E, Chapter 151, Subchapter A, and in Section 151.004, it says, "in this state," and "in this state" means within the exterior limits of the state of Texas. And those exterior limits would be, if you can picture in your mind the outline of the state of Texas, so within the borders. But here are the two great words, and here's where the trick is. "And includes all territories within these limits ceded to or owned by the United States." Now, in Texas, we're still waiting to get that verification. And it's our understanding it doesn't exist.
Yeah. That's a tricky thing that all the states use. And what they do is anytime they enact legislation that violates your rights, instead of saying this legislation applies in Texas or in California or in Kansas, wherever, they say in this state. Here's two real good examples. The first is in property tax. The taxation code in the state of Texas says that property can be taxed in this state. Well, that's a direct violation of the Constitution. Each one of us has a right to property. And not only do we have a right to property, that encompasses the right to acquire property and the right to disperse our property. Our property, we can do whatever we want with it. Because it is protected by the Constitution of the United States, a state cannot tax that. They can't tax anything that is protected by a right that is of the Constitution, that is mentioned in the Constitution.
Matter of fact, if you will go back and see when the statutes or the codes were updated on this, you'll find that it comes in line somewhere around 1933. That's where the trick started with FDR. And FDR's plan and purpose was to screw the people, which he did very successfully. And it's taken us this long to figure it out.
Another real good example of that is the fact that they require a license to practice law. We've got a number of Supreme Court decisions that state that the practice of law is an occupation of common right and cannot be licensed by the state. So when you look at an attorney's license, it'll say that he's licensed to practice law in this state. It doesn't say in Texas. It says in this state. So in this state refers to some place other than the state of Texas. I'm not positive where that other place is, but it's not the state of Texas.
Well, again, it's not the organic dirt state of Texas. It is a fantasy that they've made up. And when you read this with the connection of and includes all territories within these limits, ceded to or owned by the United States, we've just covered what areas are owned by the United States in the different states.
Yes, and I have been doing research in this for a long time. I have yet to be able to find or have the state of Texas provide for me any letter sent to it by the federal government accepting jurisdiction for any land in the United States. Now, I haven't confirmed this yet, but I have been told that any federal land in the United States, and I use that with air quotes, federal land, is not really federal land. It's state-owned land that's been leased to the federal government for 100 years or whatever. But it's still Texas land.
Right, so it's not ceded to or owned by.
That's it, yes.
Right.
President, as the subway attack in London last week proves all too well, when terrorism goes underground, it doesn't disappear. Every day there are individuals operating in the world's shadows in places like the Parsons Green Station in Fulham. They mean to do our allies and us great harm, and they're not going away. As President Trump said last week, in this era in which attacks like London are the new normal, we have to be proactive. We can't take our security for granted. We can't naively assume that when it comes to threats like that and others, even bigger, our country is out of the woods. And one way to be proactive and to keep our country safe is to reauthorize Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Earlier this month, Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, sent a letter to congressional leadership calling for this reauthorization. And it's easy to see why. Title VII of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act allows the intelligence community to collect vital information about international terrorists, cyber actors, and other important foreign intelligence targets. Information collected under one particular section, Section 702, produces particularly important foreign intelligence that helps prevent terrorist attacks and against malign state actors as well. And it does so by focusing on non-U.S. persons, which is important because this is, as it's called, foreign intelligence surveillance. It focuses on non-U.S. persons located outside of the United States who are foreign intelligence targets. But that's not all. Just as importantly, Section 702 also includes a comprehensive oversight regime to make sure the privacy of U.S. persons is protected under the Constitution. That's done by not only oversight here in the Senate and in the House through the intelligence committees, but also by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which monitors compliance with the law. There's been some criticism of this provision, but I must say the overwhelming support that Section 702 reauthorization is quite remarkable in this polarized environment in which we live. Even the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board gave the program a ringing endorsement. But what criticism that has been made is actually based on very few actual facts and often reflects a misunderstanding, both of the purpose of FISA and the controls that constrain government action. Just to be clear, Section 702 does not allow an intelligence personnel to evade the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. It may not be used to intentionally target a citizen of the United States. That citizen could be in New York or New Delhi. It simply doesn't matter. He or she is off limits. Section 702 also does not allow for bulk collection or the unlimited dissemination of intelligence that's obtained. Rather, the government's capabilities are specifically circumscribed. And finally, 702 does not ignore the possibility that intelligence personnel will inadvertently obtain information about U.S. persons. But that statute requires intricate procedures to minimize this type of incidental collection to make sure that American citizens are not swept up in foreign intelligence surveillance targets. Because of these safeguards, .702 achieves a careful balance, preserving privacy and civil liberties while giving our intelligence personnel the flashlights they need to find terrorists and other adversaries operating in the dark. This careful balance is why scholars at the U.S. Naval Academy, commenting on 702, summarize that there's simply no good case for not reauthorizing it when it comes up for renewal. And colleagues, that time for renewal is fast approaching. And that's why I today join the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence in recommending the speedy enactment of legislation reauthorizing Title VII before it sunsets later this year. Section 702 is only one piece of our dense security puzzle. It complements many other pieces of legislation that were designed to handle our incredibly diverse array of threats. And I just want to mention one other. We need to strengthen the Committee on Foreign Investment Act in the United States, known as CFIUS. Yesterday, we passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which contains an important CFIUS provision. I'd like to thank the senior senator from Arizona, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, as well as the ranking member, the senior senator from Rhode Island, for including it in the National Defense Authorization Bill, which we approved yesterday. This provision is critically important, as it could help strengthen the process by which we screen investment by foreign companies to ensure that our military superiority and our technological edge is not whittled away by foreign governments that might use our technology against us or to undermine our industrial base here in the United States. As you know, many national security threats don't make the headlines. Some of them emerge gradually. They develop quietly when countries like China begin acquiring American technology in every way possible, knowledgeable of our laws, and in a conscious strategy to try to evade those and circumvent those protections in order to grab our technological edge and undermine our industrial base. It's been reported that the Chinese government has already made major investments in robotics and artificial intelligence, pouring some $30 billion into early-stage U.S. technologies over a 6-year period. When the Chinese are able to get their hands on our cutting-edge technology, just imagine the boost for their long-term military capabilities. But here's the problem. CFIUS needs to be modernized. It needs to be brought up to date in order to plug these holes that currently exist in the protective regime. Secretary Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, said that CFIUS needs to be updated to deal with today's situation, and I agree. And my provision included in the NDAA would begin that process. It requires the Secretary to find and propose ways to make the current CFIUS process work more effectively. The NDAA also sets the stage for more comprehensive reform that I'll be discussing in the coming days and weeks. I want to thank the senior senator from Idaho, the chairman of the Banking Committee, for taking this important issue up in the Senate Banking Committee just this last Thursday. As chairman, his leadership on the committee has been indispensable, and CFIUS reform is just the latest example. The bipartisan legislation I'm spearheading is called the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act. It will modernize the CFIUS process to prepare our country to meet the 21st century threats, and I plan to introduce it soon. This bill would ensure, first, that the government scrutinizes closely those nations that are the biggest threats to our national security, and second, that CFIUS obtains more authority to look at investment deals that, as of today, don't fall under its purview, just as certain joint ventures based overseas and minority position investments in companies do not currently fall within its purview. Third, it would give CFIUS the means to assess rapidly developing technologies that our export control regime has not yet figured out how to handle. Colleagues, I hope you'll join me in supporting this important reform package, and I look forward to further debate on this topic.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Please sign up for the notes and for future show information on our website, josephfarleyshow.com. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and help share the links. We're in a fight for the very heart of America. We're being blocked by the globalists, the social media ghettos, and the fake news media, because here is where truth is revealed.